This technicality episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Hey guys, I'm here. Let's get technical. Let me set the scene for you. I was sitting on this futon binging BoJack Horseman on my computer for the first time. It was a couple days after season 4 dropped and Netflix was promoting the show left and right, so I thought to myself, might as well check this out. I was on the 8th episode of the first season of the show, The Telescope, and the climactic monologue performed by Stanley Tucci as Herb Kazaz hit so close to home it literally had me in tears.
Know what your problem is? You want to think of yourself as the good guy. Well, I know you better than anyone, and I can tell you that you're not. In fact, you'd probably sleep a lot better at night if you just admitted to yourself that you're a selfish goddamn coward who takes whatever he wants and doesn't give a shit about who he hurts. That's you. That's BoJack Horseman.
This was the moment BoJack Horseman became my favorite TV show, and The Telescope still to this day is the most impactful and thoughtful piece of television I've ever witnessed. While many questions about BoJack Horseman have intrigued me over the years, no question more so than why is J.D. Salinger in BoJack Horseman? This has been on my mind for so long because J.D. Salinger happens to be my favorite author. Would you look at that? My favorite author is in my favorite TV show. How perfect is that? So today, especially since I'm so hyped for BoJack Horseman Season 5 coming out this Friday, September 14th, I want to answer that question. This is why J.D. Salinger is in BoJack Horseman. Spoilers ahead. First, we could take his appearance on face value. It lends itself to comedy.
J.D. Salinger has inspired countless dreamers, 8th graders, and occasionally assassins. His spare lyricism and devotion to character will undoubtedly translate into a penetrating dramatic work for this, the golden age of television writing. J.D., take it away.
I want to do a show where people ask celebrities trivia questions.
What?
Like a game show?
Yeah, because since they're famous people, I think normal people would want to see if they know trivia and stuff.
A serious and well-respected author who famously would not allow his work to be adapted into a movie, creating a game show that's vapid, silly, and dare I say, phony, is a pretty funny premise and makes for some good absurdist comedy. Not to mention it comes with a plethora of nice one-liners.
Beloved novelist, J.D. Salinger. What?
The author of Catcher in the Rye? And others?
Now somebody go out and get me a Red Bull and a banana fish sandwich.
On it! It's a perfect day for a Red Bull.
J.D. Salinger is too big a star to be hamstrung by some rinky-dink operation working out of a 2-story warehouse. I need an agency with at least 9 stories. That was a reference to my work, with which you are clearly not familiar.
However, I think there's a deeper connection than just it's kinda funny, mainly because if Raphael Bob Waxberg, the creator and showrunner of BoJack Horseman, wanted this absurdity, he really could have gone with any old well-respected author. Admittedly, it may not have packed the same punch as Salinger, considering how much of a social recluse he was, and he may have to do a bit of small restructuring when it comes to the story to make sure that everything makes sense, but more or less it would have worked just as fine. So the question now becomes, why J.D. Salinger in particular? What's so special about him? Turns out there's actually quite a lot of parallels between the works of J.D. Salinger and the show BoJack Horseman. Today, we'll study 3 of Salinger's works, A Perfect Day for Banana Fish, Franny and Zoe, and The Catcher in the Rye, in hopes of examining the similar themes and ideas portrayed in each piece of art, and in doing so, understanding the message and meaning of them on a deeper level. A Perfect Day for Banana Fish was originally published in January 1948 in The New Yorker, which would go on to be where a lot of Salinger's work was published. The plot of A Perfect Day for Banana Fish can basically be divided into 3 parts. First, a conversation between Muriel Glass and the mother about the mental state of Muriel's husband, Seymour Glass, a World War II veteran who appears to have PTSD. Second, Seymour's interaction with Sybil Carpenter on the beach where they chat and look for a banana fish. And third, Seymour's subsequent suicide. The most apparent connection between Banana Fish and BoJack is in that second part, where Seymour explains to Sybil what banana fish are and how they act. They lead a very tragic life, he said. You know what they do, Sybil? She shook her head. Well, they swim into a hole where there's a lot of bananas. They're very ordinary looking fish when they swim in, but once they get in, they behave like pigs. Why, I've known some banana fish to swim into a banana hole and eat as many as 78 bananas. Naturally, after that, they're so fat they can't get out of the hole again, can't fit through the door. Not too far out, Sybil said. What happens to them? What happens to who? The banana fish. Oh, you mean after they eat so many bananas they can't get out of the banana hole? Yes, said Sybil. Well, I hate to tell you, Sybil, they die. This metaphor can mean a couple of different things in the context of A Perfect Day for Banana Fish. The interpretation I like the most is that the banana fish represents Seymour, or really soldiers as a whole, before and after the war. They enter the militia fine and normal young men, are gorged with the effects of violence and fighting, which they then find hard to escape from and return to their old life. It's probably a good time to mention that J.D. Salinger himself fought in World War II. He was drafted in the spring of 1942, fought in numerous battles, entered a liberated concentration camp, survived being on Utah Beach in D-Day, and made the rank of staff sergeant. As John Green puts it,
J.D. Salinger saw more combat in World War II than almost any other American.
After the war, Salinger was checked into a hospital for a couple of weeks on account of combat stress reaction, something similar to PTSD. Knowing Salinger's history and relationship with war, on top of what I can deduce from the actual text, this explanation for the metaphor makes the most sense to me. I've also heard that banana fish represents people and bananas are materialistic pleasures. This metaphor could also be applied to BoJack Horseman. How BoJack is affected by fame in Hollywood is a constant theme throughout the show. Before gaining notoriety and horsing around, BoJack was a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. He was a humble bartender who did stand-up comedy in hopes of larger things, but didn't really have anything except his good friends Herb and Charlotte. And, well, we all know what happened afterwards. BoJack became the narcissistic, depressed, alcoholic jerk that the show chronicles. BoJack is a banana fish, an innocent dude tempted by fame who was gorged on bananas and now is stuck in the hole. The show itself actually uses a very similar metaphor to the banana fish metaphor when describing BoJack and fame in the season 1 episode The Telescope mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm not worried about if you'll become a star. I'm more worried about how you'll change when it happens.
Like you think I'll get fat?
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
So you're saying I definitely won't get fat?
No.
Well, make up your mind, lady.
Look over there. See those tar pits? Hollywood's a real pretty town that's smack on top of all that black tar. By the time you realize you're sinking, it's too late.
Wait, is this a science lesson?
No, BoJack, it's a metaphor.
Ugh, that's worse.
In A Perfect Day for Banana Fish, it's a hole full of bananas, and in BoJack Horseman, it's a tar pit, but the metaphor, meaning, and message is the same. Franny and Zoe is a collection of 2 short stories, titled Franny and Zoe, shockingly, originally published separately in The New Yorker in 1955 and 57 respectively. Franny documents the story of Franny Glass and her relationship with the Jesus Prayer, and Zoe expands on that story by adding in Zoe Glass's reaction to Franny's newfound religious spirit and putting the whole thing in the context of the Glass family. Ooh, side note, you may have recognized that last name Glass from earlier, Seymour Glass. These aren't the only stories where the Glass family shows up in, they actually show up in quite a bit of Salinger's writing, and Seymour's suicide is an important factor in the short story Zoe. The relationship between Franny and Zoe and BoJack Horseman can be found on the very last pages of Zoe. See, each of the 7 children of the Glass family were frequent guests on a show called It's a Wise Child, a show where gifted, intelligent children answer questions posed to them by the audience. In that way, the Glass family was sort of famous for having 7 kids who were all prodigies. At the end of the short story, Zoe recounts a time he was on It's a Wise Child many years ago. His older brother Seymour, same Seymour from before, told him to shine his shoes before going on. Zoe, reluctant to shine his shoes, because, you know, what kid wants to shine their shoes, pushed back against Seymour's request. I was furious. The studio audience were all morons, the announcer was a moron, the sponsors were morons, and I damn well wasn't going to shine my shoes for them, I told Seymour. I said they couldn't see them anyways where we sat. He said to shine them anyways. He said to shine them for the fat lady. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but he had a very Seymour look on his face, so I did it. He never did tell me who the fat lady was, but I shined my shoes for the fat lady every time I went on the air again. This terribly clear picture of the fat lady formed in my mind. I had her sitting on this porch all day, swatting flies, with the radio going full blast from morning till night. I figured the heat was terrible, and she probably had cancer. But I'll tell you a terrible secret. Are you listening to me? There isn't anyone out there who isn't Seymour's fat lady. What Seymour was conveying with the fat lady is no matter how moronic or obnoxious or self-centered you find someone, everyone deserves to see shine shoes, or in other words, everyone deserves love. This exact sentiment is directly reflected at the end of BoJack Horseman Season 4, Episode 6.
Well, maybe this time, don't do the thing that makes her hate you.
I don't want to, but every time she looks at me with those big, innocent eyes, all I can think about is every shitty thing I've ever done, and I think, I don't deserve that kind of love.
Look, BoJack, I don't know a lot about balancing a state budget or how a bill becomes a law. I don't know a lot about a lot of things. But I do know this. Everybody deserves to be loved.
BoJack, regardless of all the terrible things he's done in his past, still deserves love, just like the fat lady, just like everyone else. The Catcher in the Rye is Salinger's most well-known work. The story documents Holden Caulfield and his journey after being expelled from Pensy, a prestigious preparatory school. Throughout the book, Holden complains about a number of things, notably phonies, or people who act disingenuously to appeal to others, and the movies. He really hates the movies. To prove this, I have a quote. If there's one thing I hate, it's the movies. Oh, is that not enough for you? Here we go. I hate the movies like poison. I go to the movies as seldom as I can. I figure that anybody that hates the movies as much as I do, I'd be a phony if I'd let them stick me in a movie short. When somebody really wants to go to the movies, it depresses the hell out of me. And finally, I went to the movies at Radio City. It was probably the worst thing I could have done. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not actually reading those quotes from this exact page in this book. I'm actually watching the 2004 hit movie Shark Tale, but my point still stands. I just realized the version of Shark Tale I have is dubbed in Spanish.
No me gustaría que me mataras.
What? Wait, I have so many questions. I don't know why this is, but it's... How did this happen? Now the question becomes, why does Holden dislike Hollywood? For the answer to that, we can look to the middle of the book when Holden hires a prostitute for $5, decides he only wants to talk with her, pays her $5, and then this dude Maurice, who brokered the transaction, claims it was supposed to be $10 and forcefully takes $5 more from Holden. Afterwards, Holden fantasizes about getting back at Maurice. For many sentences, he describes in great detail getting his revenge and concludes with the thought, the goddamn movies, they can ruin you. I'm not kidding. This perfectly encapsulates why Holden hates Hollywood. Not just because of the phonies who make up it, but also the phony narratives they push. Narratives like the protagonist always wins, or you'll get back at them, or it'll all work out. And these false narratives aren't just fun and games, they have real consequences. Expecting they'll come true will, in the end, only leave you disappointed or worse. That's what he means when he says they can ruin you. This is one of the central themes and messages of BoJack Horseman. Narratives pushed by sitcoms in Hollywood will establish everything will be wrapped up cleanly at the end of an episode or a movie. Everyone forgives everyone else painlessly and easily, and the story ends happily, only for the next story to start in the next episode.
Now all we need is a happy ending.
I don't think we can just resolve everything cleanly in a half hour.
This is network television, so resolving everything cleanly in a half hour is kind of what we do. You want to host a game show where everyone feels bad at the end? You can get in your little car, drive to Santa Monica, and pitch it to AMC. But these people want resolution, okay? So you get your little butt back on that stage, and you resolve.
However, real life works nothing like this at all. It takes work to earn forgiveness, and the story doesn't always end happily. Heck, the story doesn't necessarily end at all. In real life, there's no beginnings and endings, there are just moments. BoJack, because of Hollywood, expects life to work like how it does on TV, in the perfect Hollywood manner. When he does bad things and simply apologizes for them, he expects everyone to be okay with it and move on.
Todd, I'm sorry, all right? I screwed up. I know I screwed up. I don't know why.
Oh, great. Of course. Here it comes. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing shitty things and then feel bad about yourself like that makes it okay. You need to be better.
When it inevitably doesn't work out, not only does he feel bad that things weren't resolved cleanly, but he also feels bad for expecting things to be resolved cleanly, only making things worse. Will Schroeder has a phenomenal video essay on this. Like, if I had to pick, it's got to be one of my favorite videos on YouTube of all time, no exaggeration. So I strongly recommend you click the eye and check it out. It is so good. Holden Caulfield and BoJack Horseman, the show, offer the same critique of Hollywood. It pushes phony, fictitious narratives, and these narratives aren't just fun escapism. If you expect them to be real life, you'll only end up disappointed.
I got into this business because I love stories. They comfort us, they inspire us, they create a context for how we experience the world. But also you have to be careful, because if you spend a lot of time with stories, you start to believe that life is just stories, and it's not. Life is life, and that's so sad because there's so little time, and what are we doing with it?
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. No, I'm just kidding. So is this the reason why J.D. Salinger's in BoJack Horseman? No. The only person who can say for sure is Raphael Bob Waxberg, or anyone he's told, I guess. However, the works of J.D. Salinger are my favorite pieces of literature, and BoJack Horseman is my favorite TV show, so to me it's incredibly interesting to explore the numerous and prevalent parallels between them, and in doing so, find out more about why they're so important to me and why I like them so much. Why I like Squarespace so much is because it's the easiest, best, and most elegant place to make a website. If you're like Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter and always coming up with new ingenuitive ideas, it's absolutely essential to have a website for those ideas. Because I'm totally hyped for BoJack Horseman Season 5 and I love using Squarespace any chance I get, I decided to create a website where I describe/review every episode of BoJack Horseman in exactly 3 words. I encourage you to click the eye and check it out. While making it and playing around with Squarespace, a couple things stood out to me. It's breathtakingly easy to make your website unique. While Squarespace templates are made by world-class designers, each website looks like it's completely personal and not just like you're following some template. I also love that built-in search engine optimization because the world needs to hear my elegant, sophisticated reviews. Like Todd. 10 points if you can guess what episode that's a review for. What is this? If you want to start your free trial and make a beautiful website today, go to squarespace.com/technicality. And when you fall in love with it, use the code technicality for 10% off your purchase. Trying out Squarespace really does help out the channel, so it would be awesome if you could go over and check it out. Thanks, y'all. If you like this video, thank you so much. I worked really hard on this one. I recommend you check out my other videos on pop culture, like why do Wes Anderson films look so good, why is Kendrick Lamar's Humble so popular, and the song that fooled America. All of those are on screen right now, plus a link to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you to all my patrons over at patreon.com patreon.com/technicality, especially these awesome people on screen right now. For the secret code this episode, the number is 2 and the word is not. Thanks for watching, DFTBA, and explore on.